I've done that thing again where I haven't got any of the sound right. Maybe that's better. Can everyone hear me now? Hello and welcome to stream number 2 in Scripting for Beginners. Sinjin says, can I like the stream now before it starts? If you like the intro graphic, that's great. Or is that a compliment? Are you saying that this is going to be a good stream and you have high expectations? I won't let you down, I promise. I'll try not to let you down. I can't guarantee you I'm not going to let you down. No, I can. Yeah, it's going to be great. Hi, welcome. Anyone else out there? Hopefully this is all working. I've got my chat open. That's on the cards. It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and that means it's time for us to look at some game dev. Specifically, we're looking at part 2. So part 1 was last week, and maybe if you're not remembering what we covered, I'm going to start with a genuine recap, just to catch anyone up that didn't watch last week, or also to generally sort of talk about where we're at in terms of this. If you maybe didn't catch the stream, or if you're joining for the first, or maybe forgotten, you know, it was a whole week ago. Lots has happened in that week. I can't blame you if you've forgotten everything that we learnt last week. So the first part of today is I'm going to talk about what we did last time. And then once we've done that, once we've done that, I think what we'll do, I've got a plan, technically. So once we've done our recap, what we'll do is we'll look at opening this door. Yeah, we're going to do that. And we're going to cover, because we're going to do that, we're going to need to look at things like events, which is a special type of property. And that's a really powerful part of this game dev. Do you remember last time we talked about being at, position 1 in your game dev journey where you're like, I know nothing. And then position 2, when you start to realize you know some things, but not everything. And then position 3 where you know everything. And then position 4 where you realize you actually don't know everything, and something blindsides you and you end up in a situation where you feel like you're back to square one, where you don't actually know anything, except you know enough that now you really know what you don't know. Or you have an idea that you don't know everything, and that this also with programming and games, it's a moving goalpost, right? Because the tech is always improving. Crayta is always getting better. There's new stuff being added all the time. And so you might get your head around something, and then something else might get introduced, and then, whoa, you're now learning something new, developing new programming patterns, and all of that stuff. So, hi, Sinjin. Hi, Very. Nice to see you both. Weribamitni. I figured out how to say it. I'm sorry. Weribamitni. Joy, you were here last week, and you asked a really good question that I'm going to talk about, which was, you said, watching someone coding, copying their coding and experimenting and furthering it yourself is how you learn to code. And it's great. It's great that you've recognized that that's a learning strategy you can take, and that's a way you learn. Learning by doing, kinesthetic learning, I think it's called, is really, really powerful. And having the confidence to dive in and muck about with scripts and change things is amazing. So hats off to you if you're doing that, if you're taking something we're doing in either the streams, the workshops, the tutorials, whatever, and then playing around with it and having the confidence to change things and not worrying if it breaks, and knowing that you can probably ask for help if you get stuck. That's really, well done. That's awesome. If you're not at that stage yet and you're still a bit nervous about going on your own and like mucking about with the code and, taking what we're doing, going further with it, that's totally fine. We all started somewhere. I started not dissimilar to you, not knowing what I was doing, breaking things, and not necessarily asking for help because I was embarrassed about the things I was breaking. It's all part of the journey. We'll get there together. It's okay. So this week we are looking at recap and then opening the door, and then as part of that we're going to look at events, which is a really powerful property. We're also going to look at conditional statements, hopefully. I'm not too worried if we don't get onto conditional statements, because events and properties and functions, which we're going to go over, are so powerful that it's okay if we don't get to conditionals, because we can do conditionals next week. They are super useful, super powerful, and a programming like staple that you'll see in every language. But it's okay if we don't get that. We've got time. So some things we did last week. The first thing we did was we talked about how coding and code is instructions. We mentioned that code is a language that sits between human readable, things that we could read, and computer readable. It's like our intermediary way of talking to each other. The computer and humans can't directly communicate yet, but they can communicate through code. Weri Were I Bamitni. Thanks, Were I Bamitni. That's awesome. It's so kind. I can now pronounce it. We like playing with other codes and trying from scratch sometimes. And if unsure, we always ask. Brilliant. That's so good. Literally one of the best ways to approach this. Another good way to approach it is, doing coding exercises and stuff like that. Yeah, lots of different ways. But yeah, well done for getting stuck in. That's great. So we talked about how code was instructions, and it was this intermediary language between human and computer. And that's why it's written in such a sometimes confusing way. We recognize a lot of the words here. If you're a native English speaker, then you probably recognize a lot of these words. If it's written in English, and I appreciate that that's not everyone's first language. So if you're learning to code and that's not your first language, then that's a challenge. And yeah, it's amazing that you're doing it. So well done. We have some code and we can read it, and some words make sense, but it doesn't make sense grammatically. It doesn't play by general English grammar, right? It's kind of all over the place, and the words run in together. There's no spaces, for example, between these words here. There's some words coded in coloured yellow, some are green, all over the place. And so this is tricky. It plays by a new set of rules, which is called syntax. And so syntax, it's its own syntax. It's not English grammar. And so that's where it can get a bit confusing. And the syntax that code has is a syntax that computers can understand and humans can kind of understand. So it's a way of structuring language so that both humans and computers can talk to each other. I've probably talked enough about how this is instructions and this is how the instructions work. What I didn't talk about last time that I'd like to just suggest or just plop in your brain box this time is how scripts in games, and scripts in this game particularly, are what also referred to sometimes as components. And so you can think of a game as a collection of entities. So this egg is an entity, this plant is an entity, this rock is an entity. We also have locators. They are entities as well. And we have entities, and those entities have components. So this egg, let's go back to our egg, is an entity, and it has two components here. It's got the mesh component, which is a script that is written behind the scenes. It's some code that's written behind the scenes and given to this thing. And it involves things like how to draw the mesh asset and all of that stuff. So this is almost, think of this as someone else has written a script here and you're just using it. This egg also has this explode me script. And so it's an entity, and it has two components, a mesh component and an explode me script component. And this is like the fundamental building blocks of Crayta and games in certain game engines. Some game engines, it's quite different. And they use inheritance way more and stuff like ISA instead of HASA and all that stuff. But in Crayta, it's a HASA situation. So this switch pedestal 1 has a mesh component, and it has an explode me script component. And it's just worth bearing in mind when you're writing this code. It's not going to change the way you make code, but what it does do is it means that when we come to add this script to other things, you can, in your, like we added it to this air conditioning unit, you can, in your head, you can think, okay, this air conditioning unit has a aircon unit, has a mesh component, it has an aircon component, and it has an explode me component. So it's just a way of thinking about it. It has a something component. And just in case I accidentally transition between using component and script. Cool. So I just... Hello, Wary. Where were I? Okay, cool. It's, yeah, your name is an amalgamation of names. So, entity components. So we have entities, we have components, and this type of system, if we were writing any other software, we would call this an entity component system, an ECS, right? In a game, it's an entity component system as well, but we just call it a game. Cool. Other things that we talked about last week. We talked about functions. A function is a block of code, and you can call a function. What I mean by call is Crayta can basically, Crayta can run the code that's in that block. And when we execute that code, we call it calling that function. Just to clear up that term, I noticed when I watched my stream back, and I noticed I used the term call without defining it. So calling a function is essentially executing that function. When we call a function, Crayta executes the code within that function. Hopefully that makes sense. Defining a function, essentially, yeah, what we have here, we have the keyword function, which says in Lua, it says in Lua, hey, this is going to be a function. Then we have the name of the component or the name of the script that we're currently working in. Notice we have this explode me script here. We were defining what this script is up here. And then whenever we have like this line here, we're defining a function. We're saying, hey, this function exists on explode me script. The function is called onInteract. So we're saying, I would like to declare a function for the explode me script entity, explode me script component, sorry. And the function is called onInteract. And then we have some brackets at the end. Now these are important because a function has to have these brackets, and we can actually put things in those brackets, and we'll get onto that during this stream today. We also looked at adding a dragon, which we're probably not gonna need this time. We won't be doing our dragon this time, I'm afraid. We'll test the game and play with that to show where we left off. Other things, we looked at the console. So in the game editor, if you're not sure how to open your console, you need to be in advanced mode, or it even works in basic mode. You just press O on your keyboard, and that should bring up your console. This is your console. And you can see it's a console because it says console here. There's other tabs, and there's a tutorial out there where I talk about what these tabs do and how to use them. We're not going to go into that, but just know that this is an area that we can talk to ourselves from our code. We can use things like print, like this, open bracket, hello world. We did this last time, close bracket. And because I've written that line of code, when this function gets called, the first thing it will do is it will print hello world. let's actually run the game and just remember where we were. So I'll close the console for now. Let's walk up to the egg, and when I interact with the egg, we had a spell, we had the sound of a dragon, and if I look at the console, I've got an error. But I've also got this hello world here. And that's what that print statement was doing. Just going to fix that error. Line 23, camera collision enabled. It's probably something I don't want. I'm just going to take away this. We'll sort that out in a minute when we come to use it to the pedestal to open the door. Okay. So other things we looked at, we also explored, if I open this and go to crayta.com / what I mean is api.crayta.com, we looked at the API, which is an amazing area of documentation. The API stands for Application Programmer Interface. So application being the game or being Crayta, programmer being me or you, interface being how do we talk to each other. And it's split into sections. Each section is a different type of entity in the game, right? So for example, you can get a mesh like the dragon mesh, for example, and each of these is a different type of entity in the game. And a lot of these things are of type entity, which is its own thing. So anything that's physically exists in the game, sound, mesh, effect, whatever, locator should have all of this functionality attached to it already. So we have the entity, which has all of this functionality. And then if it's a mesh, like that dragon, for example, it is both an entity and a mesh. So it has all of this functionality attached to it. So just in case you're like, how do I use the API documentation to further understand or further make like adjustments, change things, improve my script, or add new functionality on my own without Andy's help, then that's how this whole set of documentation is organized. I add a mesh to my game like this, aircon unit, let's plonk that there. That aircon unit is an entity, so it has all of this, and it's a mesh, so it has all of this, just in case you're wondering what that stuff is. We're going to get into that in a little bit more detail as we go along, and if you don't really understand it, that's okay. We will go through it step by step. Got Odyssey signing in, so hello Odyssey, hello Russ. I work alongside Russ. He is another member of game development and community management team. And so hi Russ, and hi ZetaCod3. How's it going? Nice to see you. Cool. Mesh is read only. I wonder what that was all about. I just deleted the line of code so that error didn't happen again. Okay, so we talked a little bit about our API. Today we're going to have a look at some more API calls. If you want, you can just wait until I introduce new calls to figure out how to go about the process of looking at the API and then adding it to your game. If you want to shoot ahead, you can go and play around with all of that stuff and then ask away when you get stuck. So we're going to look at interact with this thing, whatever it is. At the moment it's an egg. I'm going to delete my dragon. Going to just delete the whole dragon situation. That was really fun, but we're going to just remove it and return to where we were, which is with our switch pedestal. So what I want to do is I want to make it so that this switch opens this door.